Okay, everyone. So it is noon in Chicago right now. So it's the top of the hour. So I want to get started. Let me see. I hope you can see my slides. Looks like you will. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to our SheLeadsTech with Expertise virtual event. I'm going to start today exactly at the top of the hour. I think others are still joining. I can see that people are still joining, which is absolutely fine. We do have only 1 hour today and bunch of great information to share with you guys. So I am Ramona Ratiu. I am the coordinator of SheLeadsTech with Expertise program and the current president of the ISACA Chicago chapter. I can hear some background noise. If you are not speaking, can you please mute yourself? I would appreciate that. Perfect. Okay, so a couple of logistic items I need to go over. One CPE is offered for this session. There will be 2 polling questions during this hour. Please respond to one of them so you can make our CPE report. You will receive 1 CPE allocated for this session. That will be you'll receive that via email in a week. If you are a member of ISACA, and you register for the event with the same email address that you have for your membership, then your CPE certificate will automatically be uploaded into your My ISACA account. Otherwise, you will receive the certificate via email. Give me 1 second. I want to mute somebody here. Okay. So please go ahead and use the chat and use the Q&A Zoom feature. I think we have that. I'm going to monitor for any questions you might have. Also, I truly encourage you to connect to each other and establish relationships. We have set up this, we used to set up this meeting in a webinar format, which was easier from our side, I can say that. We changed it to meeting format. Just for you guys to can see each other and connect with each other. So see your names and connect to each other. So please, I encourage you connect to each other and establish relationships. So we are all part of the SheLeadsTech community. So we are all responsible to make it stronger. Okay, the session, did I mention the session is going to be recorded? So we are going to record the session. I already started, and the link is going to be posted. I'm going to post it on the LinkedIn page, and I'm going to also post it on the SheLeadsTech Chicago Engage platform. Okay, so today's session, it is part of our SheLeadsTech with Expertise program, a program we launched back in June of this year and designed to support the SheLeadsTech community in enhancing our knowledge in on areas under ISACA curriculum. As a whole, the ISACA Chicago, the SheLeadsTech Chicago will continuously support the global mission of seeking to increase representation of women in technology leadership roles and tech workforce. Through all our chapter programs, we strive to advance more women leaders in tech industry. And the 3 pillars under the SheLeadsTech with Expertise program are the expertise, inspiring women, and virtual retreat. So expertise, quickly, as I mentioned before, will aim to bringing women to share their career progression and their knowledge and expertise. This is why we are here today, to embrace the knowledge shared by Valerie Nielsen, which I'm going to introduce in a moment, expert in risk management. The second pillar, in the middle of the slide, the inspiring women, will be featuring women who made history, including women from our days, who are who we appreciate, women that we look up to. So this pillar is going to be supported by interviews, articles, podcasts, and so on. And it will be our focus in 2022. And the third pillar, virtual retreat, it's your time to energize, invigorate, and empower. So far,
yes, can you just hold on just one?
So far, we had 2 sessions that deliver as per your request, a very relaxing yoga session and meditation session. And last month, we actually received, you have received tips and tricks from a wonderful interior designer. So that is the purpose of our virtual retreat session. So expertise, inspiring women, virtual retreat are the three pillars supporting the SheLeadsTech with Expertise program. So if you're interested in being part of the SheLeadsTech community on LinkedIn, I can see your names and I think most of you are, but if you're not, please take your phone. I know it's sitting next to you, mine is here. And go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen and you will get in touch with, you're gonna be landing on our page and you're gonna be getting in touch with fellow industry leaders. So if you come across an article, a book, anything that you think may benefit others in the group, please go ahead and share it with the group. If you have an opening position, an opportunity within your organization or your, in your network, you heard of an opportunity, feel free to post it on your LinkedIn page. We truly appreciate your support. And talking about supporting our community, so we are thrilled to have a group of wonderful women from DePaul University joining us, a school that is very dear to my heart. I'm an alumni. The group of women in cybersecurity, it is represented today by Rachel Fox, which I would like to welcome and ask Rachel if she can talk a little bit about the group that I think you guys are called Chapter at DePaul, the objectives, and perhaps if there are any ways that we, the SheLeadsTech community, or anyone on the call can support you, can support the aspiring women that are part of your group. So with that, I can stop sharing my screen. And if you don't mind, Rachel, are you there?
Yes, yes. Okay. I can go ahead and just start sharing my screen. Okay. So let me just make that into presenter mode. Okay, so my name is Rachel Fox. I am the current president of the Women in Cybersecurity Club at DePaul. And I just wanted to share with you what our goal is. We just started the chapter. I don't know if this is blocking you. We just started the chapter this semester. So we're trying to create a bunch of events and have it every single week next semester. So our goal is to create a community of support and advancement for women majoring in cybersecurity at DePaul. So the way we're trying to do that, we are trying to provide webinars and live speakers for our members. We're trying to provide workshops and internship opportunities. We're also looking for mentors and sponsorship. So we've actually been sponsored by an ISACA member before. Sarah Isaacs sponsored us to go to the networking cruise that was past September. So that was a great opportunity for us, but that's just an example of what we've done before. And then we're searching for women that want to share their experience in the cybersecurity field. So if someone wants to share their experience with us, we would love to have that opportunity for you to come and talk and kind of say what helped you, what challenges have you overcome? We're also looking for specialists to speak on different cybersecurity topics. So I'm currently speaking to one woman right now that I want to come talk with us, and she does digital forensics. So she's going to talk about how she tackles a case. We're also looking for career advice and mentorship. So if anyone in the industry is interested in becoming a mentor for one of our students, or if you want to come to one of our, we're going to have like resume workshops. So if you want to come and like give career advice that way. We're also looking for sponsorship for our members, whether that is through any internship opportunities you guys have and want to share with us, or if you want to sponsor like Sarah did and send one of our members to a networking event or a conference, we are really open to that. And if you want to contact us anyway, these are all the different emails you can send. So you can contact us at our official email, you can contact me, or you can contact our faculty advisor. And if you guys want to follow us on social media, I included that as well. I don't know how many people use it, but it's mostly for our students. You can see our events through there also. And that is all the slides I had. I want to just get it through quick because I know you had a lot going on.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Rachel. That was great. It's nice meeting you first of all, and nice meeting the group at DePaul. I can see you guys, several of your colleagues have actually joined us today, so nice seeing you. So again, thank you for your quick overview. Indeed, an ambitious group with a great vision. Please connect with our community on LinkedIn. And for all of us, for everyone that's here on the call, if you come across any internship opportunities, oh, you heard Rachel, if you want a mentor, if you have the time to dedicate and support the students at DePaul here, please go ahead and connect with Rachel. If you want, you can just connect with me directly. I will put you in contact. Also, if you have any opportunities, any openings in terms of like internship opportunities, please send them my way. I'm more than happy to coordinate, be the liaison with the DePaul group if needed. And for the DePaul group, for you ladies, we do have actually wonderful mentors. We do have a program, Grow Mentorship Program at the chapter level, at the ISACA Chicago chapter level. If you need a mentor or somebody to talk to, or, we can coordinate, we can partner and have them, come to DePaul or arrange for partnership. Again, a super big thank you for Fereshtek Garamani, assistant professor and the advisor of the group at DePaul University, who basically made this connection. I spoke with her and, on a different topic, and we actually made this happen. So I'm happy that we connected and we could have the group here with us today. So thank you, Professor Fereshtek, for all your continuous support to students.
All right, thank you for letting me talk.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. Now, moving to our next slide, and I am honored to have Valerie Nielsen with us today, sharing her expertise in risk management and why does risk management matter. So Valerie is the managing director at Longview Leader Corporations and brings with her experience across a wide range of issues facing companies today related to technology, finance, data privacy, governance, and risk mitigation. She has a fantastic background in risk management and a tech-focused entrepreneurial mindset. Before going into details about risk management, about assessment, mitigation, emerging risk, you're going to hear all about it today, I would like to welcome Valerie. So to welcome you today. And also, I will ask if you can start sharing with us a little bit about your career, a little bit about if you have any advice, any suggestions for any of us starting in risk management, or for someone who's actually changing roles and getting into risk management world. Valerie, are you still with us?
We need the international sign for mute because I always try to be respectful and be on mute, and then I forget to turn it off. So I was saying, Ramona, thank you for the warm welcome. Glad to be here on this fun Friday afternoon, everyone. There's a lot of ways you can spend your time, but we're grateful that you've chosen to spend some of your afternoon with us today. From a career perspective, part of my experience has been in that internal audit field and professional services with risk and compliance layered with that. I've been in small companies. I've been in a bank that was a $1.5 billion bank holding company to some of the largest companies in the world like HSBC and GE Capital. So I've seen a wide range of sizes of departments, functions, issues in many organizations. And I always say you can take the girl out of audit, but not the audit out of the girl. So that's really been my foundation in understanding risk management. But I would say that in order to really be that valued partner at the table, because sometimes audit, risk, and compliance are seen as subject matter experts and aren't always invited to the big table for the meal, so to speak. You have to be able to speak business, and you have to be able to translate these technical things into the day-to-day activities of the business leaders you interact with. And that's going to be really the basis of our discussion that we'll get into in the presentation to really kind of change our mindset a little bit, still be doing the same thing, but how to really increase engagement so that risk management is really there at the table, helping folks navigate through that intersection of strategy and risk management. Ramona, you also asked about changing careers as far as, you know, audit or maybe technology. My thought is, in doing any of those things, I think you have had to make more than an effort, but be able to speak business, whatever that is for your organization, speak operations, just as well as if you are, you know, a P&L leader in an organization, so that you have a platform of credibility. I think that's what allows you to move in an organization and not just be seen as, oh, we've got to do something about risk. We've got to go through the audit. It's a homework assignment. And so that's to me that transformation that we all have to go through and have that realization in order to be part of the, you know, the big kid table.
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. Great insights here. So with that, do you want me to share the slides for your presentation, or are you okay with sharing your slides?
I will share. We'll
Okay.
see. Hopefully folks can see my slides. Let me
Yes,
see.
we can.
I want to now put it on. We're trying to move the
Presentation.
ribbon of everyone's wonderful video. Let me see. Let me go up to presentation. Okay. So everyone should be able to see slides.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. So we've established that we're going to talk about why does risk management matter. Many of you come from different industries. You may come from financial services where there's requirements for that from depending on what regulator oversees your business. You may be coming from energy or utilities, again, regulated industries, or defense, pharma, and drug production, right? Those are all areas that have regulation or HIPAA, whatever. So that means that we have some commonality, that we may have a different industry, but there are things that we do share. And one of them is risk management. And we know in our individual departments in audit, risk, compliance, security, that it matters. But sometimes we have to be advocates to demonstrate why it's valuable to the business. So we will continue here with going to just set the stage here for what we're going to talk about. I'm going to try just initially set the table of what is risk management. And again, I'm not going to go to that it's super technical, because we can go a lot of ways and just have a discussion on that alone. I really want to talk about how can we define risk management for those business leaders that we're interacting with, so it's something they can identify with. And then I wanted just to talk a little bit briefly about just kind of different risks, meaning what's current, which is really impacting the organization, versus an emerging risk versus an extreme risk. And I think having a dialogue about that with your business leaders, particularly when you're in your annual audit planning process, or in the security area, you may be doing something similar in preparing periodic presentations for your CISO or CIO for their board presentation. So how do we put some prioritization and some content just in saying, here's all these risks? And then I want to spend a little bit of time to thinking maybe a little bit differently about risk assessment and risk mitigation, again, so that you can have richer discussions with your greater business leaders. And then the last section, hopefully maybe we spend the most time on and have the most give and take on, is about how do you speak to senior leaders, or maybe your immediate auditees or stakeholders. Because again, we can talk so much about technical items, right? But you know, we tend to lose people. So how do we make this that they can see themselves in the process? So we'll continue here. And so a little definition. And I think risk management can be boiled down to, it's a series of what if conversations. And the reason why I say that is I think it's much easier to talk to leaders outside of your own function or even within about what can happen, because that's what risk is. You're trying to understand the scenarios and how different attributes, whether we use impact, likelihood, variety of other things, the time, velocity, frequency, and trying to understand what our decisions might look like if we make them and how that impacts the strategic objectives and plans of the organization. And so then I'm thinking, what else is it? I happen to be a real fan of history. And so recently saw something about how historians will interpret history, and they think about how things could have gone differently. So you can go back to maybe a particular historical event and say, gee, I wonder if maybe let's say a presidential election went a different direction. I'm not talking about recent history, just things in the past, or maybe if a law had been passed or not, or if someone didn't come into a leadership role, what would have happened differently? And I think that's also a great premise for risk management and understanding the risks that are facing an organization. Because then that helps you understand causality. Because that's the thing that sometimes we don't get deep enough into in asking those 5 why questions. Because if you don't understand root cause, or you're just addressing symptoms, it doesn't go away. And then I think for those of us in the risk business, we lose a little credibility with that value proposition to business leaders, because they'll say, well, we did this risk management thing and it didn't work. Well, you got to get down to root cause. So also then, to me, it's about how do you make it part of the strategic discussions in your organization? So I think it's risk versus opportunity, because risk, if you want to talk about it, it really can create opportunities than necessarily, oh, it's a stop sign. I think sometimes those of us who are subject matter experts was like, oh, risk is bad. I'd like to say risk is good. Probably thinking, Valerie, what's wrong? How could it be good? Companies exist because there's high inherent risk to exploit. And what risk management does, it helps the company understand whether it's protocols, procedures, mitigation, whatever name or label you want to put on it, to reduce to residual level so that they understand how to manage and does not compromise the capital structure of the organization. And if that's done well, you're rewarded with profit. Another thing to think about risk management for more transformational discussions, it's really the ultimate change management role, because that's also what you're helping the organization understand is change. What is this change going to look like for some of these decisions? What are the puts and takes of that? You have to be a student of the business. It also helps the prioritization and sequencing. I have a thought that risk is not necessarily these individual risks. They are interdependent. So you may make some adjustments to mitigation for one risk, but may have some unintended consequences. So you need to be understanding things in totality and thinking about some of these unintended consequences. And then lastly, there's what I would call an reputational uplift. Reputation is so important to any organization and individual. And once you have an issue impacting your company, sometimes it's hard to then gain that trust back. And so this to me is also what risk management does in helping folks understand how to manage that reputation or appreciate how their decisions can impact reputation and what then risk tolerances they may have for the decisions that the leadership team thinks is necessary for the organization. So then thinking about the value contributions, because we're saying, well, why does risk management matter? I think it helps bring risk intelligence to what's happening and to that decision making and just assessment process of how well but we don't think about it as solutions. And I think that's very important, again, so that you can move the needle on risk management. So it's not the homework assignment, because sometimes, you know, we make recommendations, whether we're in the tech side or internal audit side, and we may not know enough about the business. So our recommendations are too general. And then the business is like, in management, I don't know what to do. What do you want me to do? You need to help them craft some solutions. I don't think you're crossing the line for my audit friends, because consultants make recommendations all the time. You're not implementing, but some specificity and making it a solution than just here's a recommendation really, I think, will help then the remediation of whatever that risk exposure is. Also, I think the value proposition is the creating of these roadmaps, whether it's short-term or long-term, because of the risk assessment and risk understanding that has come with that. Oops, sorry, I went too fast. And then that feeds into remediation, because also we talked about risk helps the prioritization and sequencing of issues and remediation. That also has to be understood. Everything cannot be remediated in 3 months. And if it's a bigger thing, that means also it's probably a bigger risk that was not being managed well. So then there's what's the timeline for that. So very interesting to think about things that way. So then we're going to continue here. Let's see. So is it a risk or an issue? So I have some definitions here. So to me, a risk is talking about an event or condition that exists and has consequences, and there's the root cause for those consequences. Versus an issue is a topic or a problem that is up for discussion. And I said that definition I took from the Oxford Dictionary. And to me, why that's important is oops, I think I went the wrong way here. Sorry about that. Is then what do these risks look like from a statement perspective? So here I have a some example, and you know, we could do a whole session on how to write a risk. So the first one I have here says vendor quality problems may cause production delays. It's an issue to me. It's not telling me about the consequences, cause, and maybe the actual like exposure. What's the financial exposure? Versus the second one that I have here, I'm saying that vendor packaging material below specification may cause a 30-day delivery delay with contract penalties of $25,000. I mean, I made that up, but I think you to me is a topic, but the risks come down to having those more specific statements about your vulnerabilities or the vulnerabilities you and your organization feel you have to ransomware. Third party, you know, risk management, of course, that's even a topic, but third parties. I don't think third parties are a risk in and of themselves. You have to then dig into what are some of those specifics underneath that. Supply chain, of course, that's a word about almost 20 months ago, or 2 words that none of us really used in common everyday conversation, but it is now. So supply chain is, to me, is what it is. It's your supply chain, but it's not necessarily a risk in and of itself. You have to get into the components and stakeholders and the availability of things and the delivery of things. Those are the more specific risks than necessarily risk topics or accelerators. let's see here. Let's go to our next slide. So I'm going to take a quick pause here because that was a little bit of information. And I'll just ask Ramona, do we have any feedback from the audience before I continue?
I don't see any questions in the chat at the moment. If you guys have any questions for Valerie.
It's very interesting because a materiality assessment, a little different than risk. Let's see here. Because it's going to help us curate and prioritize issues, and it's going to understand the relative importance of some of these specific issues. So if we go here then to my next slide here, so this is the template. It's a very simple, matrix here. And it's talking about the influence of shareholder assessments and decisions. And then here it's the significance of the economic, environmental, and social impacts. And so you're looking at then is the materiality medium to high, very high. Now we're not talking about the quantifications that are behind that, but at least these issues. So those in that prior slide where I had risk accelerators, risk topics, whatever, those are things then to me that could be mapped on a matrix like this before you go to risk assessment, because then you'll at least know what are the topics and let alone get that feedback from the leaders or the function that you are going to audit, assess, create, cyber assessments with before you jump to a risk assessment. And so here's a real life example of what one can look like. And this one is from Bank of America. So a lot of major companies, if you go to their website, it might be focused on a particular topic. This one is ESG, but I thought it was so valuable to see because it has the 4 quadrants here, but it has these issues, right? Transparency and accountability and reporting, access to finance. Here's some things about employee diversity, systemic risk management, consumer financial health. It's putting these things, we've got also up here, ethical behavior. So it's putting the issues, topics that the organization sees as important and helps you prioritize, because then I think it helps then drive a discussion about risk assessment. So that's one thing I'm talking to clients and whatnot about is doing a materiality assessment before you jump to risk assessment. So when it comes to risk, I think these 3 categories or some descriptor like this are things that most of you have seen before. I will want to talk a little bit more on the extreme risk that might be slightly new for folks. Current risk, so let's jump to what is a current risk. And so current risk is, to me, what's on your risk register or what is for the organization or the function or whatever. To me, it's impacting the company's ability to achieve its goals, and also we can quantify in most cases that there's some sort of financial impact. And I have here a time horizon. Those things are definitely subject to what should be customized for your organization and business. Generally, it's probably 0 to 2 years. It could be a little longer, again, depending on what it is your company does. So then if we go then to, well, okay, what's an emerging risk? An emerging risk to me, of course, is something maybe that it's not hitting the organization right now, but maybe you're seeing that other companies or something is happening in the industry that has the potential to impact the organization, and it's worthwhile being proactive. Think about, is this something that we should be managing for, or should we adjust our current risk register? Because maybe some risks, and maybe it's changed slightly, or maybe some risks needs to be sunset because there's something new to bring on to the risk register. I would say an emerging risk may have a 2 to 5 year time horizon. But the one thing I think is very important when it comes to a risk, emerging risks, and we can, again, that can even just be a separate session, is when does an emerging risk become a current risk. So some things that I've done in my past, maybe something, an emerging risk, maybe for 3 to 6 months is on that emerging risk register. But at some point it needs to be decisioned whether it comes off or does it move to your current risk register because it's that important. So something to think about, because if you just keep things evergreening on the emerging risk register, then how valuable is it, right? Just then it's another list of risks than necessarily kind of that intermediate place to do that due diligence to say, hey, is this a risk that we should be managing to and move it to our current risk register? And I think we're seeing some things come in through the chat. So let me get through the next one before we take another pause for our conversation today. So extreme risks and black swan events. So extreme risk is something that I've been hearing this year. And of course, a lot of it's been tied to climate because of some of those things that are happening. Another example in that, to me, in that extreme risk is if you're in the housing industry, whether it's lending or insurance, there's always that 100-year concept or 50-year floodplain thing. So that to me would be extreme risk. It has a time horizon that is probably at least 5 years in the future. It has a high consequence and we feel has a low probability of occurring, but when it does, it will have an extreme impact. I put some examples here on the left-hand side of the slide. Because even this year we had it, though I think it had more Southern Illinois was passed, right? Because we had cicadas. It was the 17-year cicadas, right? So you could call that an extreme event also. Natural disasters are also can be sometimes extreme events depending on the strength, issue, and frequency. So the one thing, though, I think is worthwhile to talk about here, though, is that black swan extreme risk. You know, there's a lot of research out there that says those things are hard to predict, but there's no question they're becoming more frequent. Again, particularly on the climate side, we're seeing more intensity when it comes to weather for a variety of reasons, and everyone can have different view on just that climate alone. But I have the proposition that I think you can predict them, meaning that you can be off your distribution, your bell curve, will have some variability to it. But I think we have it hard as human beings to kind of put that in our minds. So I think we have to set that aside and begin to think about these frequencies that maybe they're not 100 years or 50 years. Maybe these are things that are that 10, 15-year time horizon, or even 5, that extreme events, that frequency is higher than being so remote. Very different thought process. So then let's take a pause here, Ramona, because I do see some things coming in the chat before we jump over to risk assessment.
Yes. A couple of questions here. Would you consider the COVID-19 qualifying as the extreme risk?
Yes. Now, most of us, I remember I've had it on my risk registers, not COVID, but a pandemic. And I think we had it as emerging, which probably wasn't right either. But then we saw that as so remote that we're like, well, it was there. And we probably didn't think about it correctly. We probably were thinking about it more as an epidemic than necessarily as a pandemic, right? Because we've all now become armchair epidemiologists. Saw what happened with COVID-19, I would imagine that these epidemics might be more frequent. In fact, if you've been watching the news, the CDC is getting involved. I think I don't think it's Michigan State. I think it's University of Michigan. They have an outbreak of flu that's over 500 people, and they're jumping in now to that root cause and due diligence and investigation on that. So I'm not saying that's going to be, a pandemic, but I'm just saying things are very different. We've not seen that before. So you might even thought that is a remote situation in this day and age. So I'd say it's extreme. I would maybe push us to think, will that frequency be much more than necessarily every 100 years? Thanks for the question.
Yes, and with that, I think George addressed this question. Deborah was asking, what would you have said that the pandemic was before 2019? And I think you mentioned that you qualify that as an emerging.
Yeah. When I think about it, it was a great question because I remember I had on there pandemic, but since we all didn't really have personal experience with it, it just seemed remote. And really, when I think about it with the questions, we really probably should have had it listed as an epidemic and then a separate risk really as a pandemic.
Yes. Also, Deborah is also wondering if you can discuss the ERM process of
what are my current risks? And then I might have my extreme risks over here. And I probably would have it as graphic as possible when I'm presenting it to other leaders. I would have backup for all, for the details, but I would probably show it a little bit more in pictures than I would in text. Again, that's probably a different session too. So that's how I think about it. If you go to COSO ERM, all these things are part of it. I think it can look different for everyone. But I would also say for any of these lists, whether it's at a functional level or an enterprise level, again, this is my opinion. I think if you've got more than 10 to maybe 15 on the high side on any of those lists, I would go back and say, is this an issue versus a risk? Go back to the initial, that earlier slide we had and think about that, because I don't see how can anyone, even, your large or small company, at an enterprise level could manage the 40 risks. And like that, some of them are emerging and whatnot. That's a big list. So I probably not answered that in complete detail, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea.
Yes, thank you, Valerie. And also, George is just a comment here. Actually, George is recommending an excellent book called The Gray Rhino that makes this argument and case that a black swan is once in a 100-year.
I think it can be done not just at enterprise, but also at a particular functional or department or whatever. So I think it can scale for whatever you need. I think it's really great, of course, at an enterprise level, because it helps those who are looking across the organization. And I think it would be a fabulous discussion and tool at a board level to present to the board saying, hey, this is how management sees the issues and how they're prioritized. And hey, board, how do you align with this? I think that could be a really valuable discussion at a minimum on an annual basis, let alone the audit committee when you're looking at risks.
Thank you, Valerie. That's all we have in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to have a little fun here when it comes to risk assessment. So it is Fun Friday. So here we go. So little foreshadowing. So I kind of think it's fun to make risk a little bit more interesting. So I kind of see Bugs Bunny as a risk manager, and you're probably thinking, you need to identify. So I think about Bugs Bunny, that he's always, proactively trying to uncover risks, and, and he's talking to us, the audience, on, what's happening, right? So that's what you want to do when you identify risks. Then you need to assess the risk, right? So you have to look at that likelihood and impact. I know that there's a lot of other views out there, and there's different models, but at a minimum, you've got likelihood and impact for your assessment. Then you need to evaluate the risk, right? So, Bugs Bunny would always be trying to figure out, his nemesis or Elmer Fudd, like, how much of a threat is this issue, is this risk to me, and try to figure out then how to prioritize response. And then you need to improve. And I think there's a couple components in the improve or design component, right? So you have to have that discussion. You have to think about it. You have to gain alignment and jumping to tactical execution. And I think that's the mistake that happens, whether it's a project or risk remediation. People want to jump to like tactical, like, oh, I'm showing progress. People typically, if it's on the audit side, you're looking at outstanding audit issues. On the tech side, it's the patch management, it's the vulnerability management, it's, threat intelligence. It's all these things that you're using to tell the story. So then lastly here, we have a nice little summary of the process, as Bugs Bunny is the ultimate risk manager, that you need to identify, analyze, evaluate, improve, and monitor. Now, sometimes you can collapse that to 4, make it 6, whatever. There's not a wrong way on how you do it. You just need to do it and be able to tell the story around it. So then we come to risk mitigation. What can that look like? How do we talk about that with leaders? So this time I've turned to Donald Duck for the framework on risk mitigation. So let's see what Donald Duck has to tell us. So there's risk avoidance. I always kind of love this picture, because then I thought about, these are the hawks or whatever circling around, right? Or vultures. Put in our new product, we're going to, improve our product, and we're going to do that. Or sometimes it's like, hey, we're not making money in this business unit. Maybe we need to divest, or we need to close it down. Those are all risk avoidance topics. Okay, so let me close that out. So then now, okay, if I've got risk avoidance, then let me see here. We have risk acceptance. So Donald Duck would acknowledge in some situations that he had to accept the impact and possible consequences. So it's not a bad thing for risk acceptance. I know sometimes we're like, oh, wow, well, but risk acceptance needs to be understood and quantified. Boards or leaders will say, yeah, we'll just assume the risk. Well, what are they exactly assuming? They better know. And I'd like to have them, electronically sign off on it. And then I think risk acceptance should also be monitored. So depending what your reporting responsibilities are in what area, I think you keep a list of what risks have been accepted, and then what's, how is that risk and those impacts operating. I would say that probably the company still has the ultimate risk, right? But they're trying to transfer the financial impacts of sometimes of that risk. So There are definitely techniques that can be used for risk transference. And then risk limitation. Again, this is something that we see a lot, of course, in contracts, but there's other things that you can do for your risk limitation, as far as maybe your products or what it does, however you do that. But that's, I think, is the other thing you have to think about when it comes to risk mitigation. Are there some limitations you can put on the overall expansion list, expansive risk? So that, okay, maybe it's a $25,000 potential loss and necessarily $100,000 loss. All right, so then for Donald Duck, overall, when you think about risk mitigation, you're talking to your leaders, it's about risk avoidance, acceptance, transference, or limitation. Those are the techniques that are typically used when it comes to risk mitigation. So, of our particular department, people tend to kind of think about, to me, risk management as either, is it for the defense or the offense? So defense to me, which is very important, but if people are thinking about compliance, competitiveness, geography issues. So really, you want to have this as just baseline and table stakes, and this is what is already in place, versus to really bring that value and why risk management matters. You want to go to the offense of what opportunities can be created through managing risk well or understanding risk. Because if a company assesses risk, they may see there's opportunities for a new product or expansion or innovation because they're understanding the risk landscape better. So I think that's where ultimately you want to get to on that maturity curve. But I think if you have the conversation that way to talk about risk as uncovering opportunities, whether it is to reduce risk or to maybe take on more risk in the organization because the organization can, that's a very valuable and enriching conversation than, here's my risk register and everything's red, yellow, green, or whatever, or here's a score. I mean, we need those things to back up the conversation, but I don't think it should drive the conversation. I think it can attract talent to the organization and retain talent to the organization, which is so critical now with so many terms we've called that's out there, but I'll just call the great resignation, right? Because if people don't feel connected to the values and don't feel that things are being managed well to avert a problem or that there's a problem with strategy, people are going to go. And so down here, then it's about that maturity curve is for you to understand and also for your leaders to understand where you are in that risk management journey. It's okay to be at the beginning. Not everybody is this like mature place. Obviously the banks tend to be, but they've had to be. So there's no place that's wrong. You're not behind. The key thing is to start. Okay. So here, my kind of advice here is think about the 15-minute, if you could even get 15 minutes, it could even be the 5-minute conversation with the CEO or that C-suite leader. In order to have then that conversation about risk management or issues that you want to bring to their attention, you've got to be able to talk about the short-term and long-term of the issue or several issues and how then that maps to the strategy and values of the organization. just laying it out saying, hey, these are the things I think we should do. Give them some color. That doesn't mean that they're going to do exactly what you say, but you've got to give people a starting point to jump off so that you have those creative ideas in those conversations. This also too can drive to innovation for creation of value opportunities, value creation. And again, you're probably thinking, how can that be? Because it's like, oh, we're trying to stop something. Well, no, again, I think if you talk about this to the CEO, that how then this risk understanding can uncover different places for him or her to go when it comes to services or talent or even relocation or using remote work, whatever the case may be, you'll have people much more engaged in inviting you more frequently back to that leadership table. Okay, now, so this one also solution, I'll call it, earlier I was talking about a materiality assessment. So this has been around a while. This is nothing new. You may have seen it, you may have not. It's called a bow tie risk assessment. And what I like about it is it's graphic. You always have to remember that the senior leaders that you're talking to, they get a lot of stuff that comes through their some consequences, and that does go back to what we had earlier, and what is a risk statement, or what does a risk really look like as far as when you try to put it into words. You have your control measures. What are the potential cause? What are the measures? What are the potential outcomes? I just think this is easier. Again, this can be another conversation we have in the future, just doing these alone, but I think it makes us be better when we are engaging on these conversations, that we understand the details and have thought about what the solutions are, and it makes it easier for people on the other side of the table to engage with us and appreciate the seriousness or the urgency that we are talking about when it comes to the risk exposures we have seen. So with that, we've now gotten to Q&A, so I'll take a pause there now, Ramona, to see what else has come through the chat.
Yes, I don't see any questions at the moment. If you guys have any questions, you can mute yourself or you can put it in the chat. We do have 2 more minutes for today. So another question from Deborah. Deborah, you're very active. Thank you. I love it. So what are strategies to deal with
and you're trying to explain a risk or even your risk mitigation strategy, and they always want to understand dependencies. Well, but this risk is dependent on that. Which, you mentioned that prior slide, there was, a visual, but do you have any recommendations for how best to go about that, understanding dependencies?
Yeah. So, I always love a graphic. So what I've done in the past is maybe had some sort of let's say graphic or a little icon to talk about that, how one risk has some connectivity to another one, right? And I may try to even in the list put them together. And so I make some, have like a note or whatever, but I try to do that. And you probably want to also then the strength of the interconnection, right? Of course, then I know that goes to maybe some sort of quantification. And another thing that is also can be powerful in those dependencies is sometimes is the direction of risk, right? Is it going down? Is it increasing? Is it stable? We've all seen those kinds of things. I think that can be also helpful because it's really if things are increasing and that there's this other project that's going to make this particular change or have this particular what you think it is. Doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, but you get a sense of where that individual or group of individuals is coming from, because that can drive your reporting on how you might show it. I think when it comes to reporting in so many areas, the one thing we neglect to do is ask the people who are going to be consuming the information, what do they see as important? What would they like to see? It doesn't mean we still may not add a few things because we want to, be comprehensive, but what do they need to see? Let's ask them, what should it look like? So hopefully that kind of helps.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Valerie. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I want to say a big thank you to you, Valerie, for such a wonderful discussion and for all the amazing insights you have shared with us. I also want to say thank you to Rachel, to the entire board of Women in Cybersecurity from DePaul, Maureen, Roxana, Andrea, and Valeria. And thank you to all of you, for all the participants today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here with us. Have a safe and wonderful weekend. So please stay in touch.
Yep, thanks. Love to see everybody. Please feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Love to hear from you.